All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. Welcome to Science on Tap. I really appreciate the turnout tonight. We rearranged the room, or should I say the brewery rearranged the room, and I think this works really well. Thank you all for coming. I think we're going to jump right into it tonight because we have a pretty cool topic. Just a couple quick announcements to make. I would like to take a second and put my beer down and offer a poster of Flathead Lake, a map of Flathead Lake, as a token of our appreciation for speaking. You're welcome to put it right back where I was. But the sentiment is there. And if anybody's interested, we are selling Flathead Lake maps tonight at the back. You can talk to Adam. Adam, please raise your hand. They're going for $20 a piece, and I think they're worth every penny. They're really nice. Question over there?
Does it have the Flathead Lake monsters on it?
You'll have to buy one and look for yourself, I'm afraid to say. Yeah. I can't give away Flathead Lake secrets quite yet. It's too early. So I'm gonna introduce our speaker, but before I do, I'd like to hand the microphone over to Hillary Devlin, my wife, and she'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Flathead Lakers, and I'll give you a couple other announcements, and then she'll give it back to me, and I'll introduce our speaker, and we'll get started tonight, okay?
I just wanted to mention that both the biological station and the Flathead Lakers do great work around the lake, and we are supported by our community. So if you are not a Flathead Laker member yet, please become one. I know I can get a couple of board members to buy a beer if you'd like to become a Laker member tonight. But we really rely on our community for support to do all the great work that both organizations do. Also, there are some clipboards on the tables that you can sign up for e-newsletters from the Lakers and from the bio station. You can also suggest topics for Science on Tap. If we get enough interest in something, we'll find an expert somewhere in this area to give a talk. I think that was it. Become a Laker member, donate to the station. Thank you.
Okay, I thought of a couple other things to mention really quick, and they're really important because they're about beer. So, in order to, if you guys are out of beer and you need a glass, please wave to your waitress. I forgot her name. Janice. And she's not in right now, but you'll see her flitting about, and feel free, it's not rude at all to just flag her down and get a fill up as we move along here tonight. It works really well. Ooh, looks like, I don't know. They need you over there.
Hi, everybody.
And the other thing to mention is that the brewery has been outstanding helping us out with Science on Tap, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Every pint sold tonight is $1 for us, for the Flathead Lakers and the Flathead Lake Biological Station to split, and so far it's paid off our website and helps us along the way in getting our printing paid for and stuff like that. So very much appreciated. Thank you. So in other words, drink up and drink beer. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Erik Wenum, who is the black bear or all bear? All bear, the bear and mountain lion conflict specialist with FWP. So I'm sure that this is not news to many of us in the room, but there's been a little bit of bear activity in the valley over the last summer, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what that means for us and what it means for the bears. So thank you very much, Erik.
Okay, well, thanks very much. First thing I wanted to do, a show of hands, who lives in the valley year-round? I mean, really pretty much everybody probably now this time of year. So, well, we get a lot of transients, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what I want you to do is I'm kind of going through some slides, and I don't have a canned or scripted program. I kind of wing it as I go, and once in a while I shoot off and go down a rat hole. If it seems like I'm going someplace you don't know really, just to sort of reel me back, that's fine. If you've got questions, by all means interrupt. I've got some entertaining slides, and then I do so many high school biology programs and general classes in schools that I've always got to have a test at the end of my presentation. So I have to have a test. And just I hear boos, but that's the rules. And so I figured everybody who gets 100% I'm going to do my part to help raise money for these guys, and so everybody who gets 100% gets to buy me a beer. Okay, that worked. As I thought about it more and more coming down, I realized, boy, I hope these guys aren't really very smart, because it'd be a really long drive home with 70 or whatever people in the room. So, but with that, yeah, what I want you to do is, as we're going through the slides, really decide who has problems with whom. You know, do people have bear problems, or do bears have people problems? And again, I don't have not a lot of script. When I see a picture, I'll kind of shoot off something. And we'll see where it goes. As he said, I'm the bear and lion specialist. Primarily, I wear 4 hats. And really what I deal with primarily black bear conflicts, mountain lion conflicts, and I'm one of about 5 guys and a gal who are part of the grizzly bear trend monitoring program, where we go out and I capture grizzly bears with radio collars on them, monitor them full time for trying to get towards delisting. The other thing that I'm the sole biologist on what's called the WART, and that's the Wildlife Human Attack Response Team. So I have the privilege of dealing with whenever there's a mauling or whatever, trying to eat people. So, kind of a familiar map, we all know where we are. But real quick, I violated one of the fundamental rules of this program, the Science on Tap. They said it's got to be light, no data, no numbers, that sort of thing. Well, I broke that, but I have a good reason for that, and I'll explain in just a minute. Basically, I cover about 6 million acres, so I cover a lot of ground. I'm from, the Fisher River, Lake Kootenai, excuse me, all the way up to Canada, then west or east over to the Continental Divide, and then I follow along the tribal properties, Highway 200, and then everything north to Canada. You'll see Glacier Park is both in and out of the magical blue line. That's because I spent a lot of time in Glacier Park, both for WART and then for grizzly bear trend monitoring, and then whenever they need assistance with some other things, I guard a lot of goats and whatnot for the park as well. So I covered a lot of ground. One of the bad slides. So if we'll only look at 2 lines really quick, so it's not so daunting. But the first line you want to look at is the very bottom, the blue line. That's a 10-year average of number of phone calls that I get in a given season. So in a season, we're talking 365 days. So my long-term average is about 713. Now, if you skip up a couple of lines and you look at the red line, you'll see 2015. Kind of an increase. Everybody talked about it. There was a lot of press, a lot of stuff going on with bears. So not quite twofold increase, but we're getting pretty close. So we pare down a little bit on that. Let's just look at 2015 real quick. And what you see is the bulk of the calls, really 97% of them, occur May through November. Not terribly surprising, because this time of year, ideally bears are denning, although I actually have some tracks that have been reported the other day. So if you look at it, that's 5.5 calls per day, every day. Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter. Bears don't have calendars, they don't care what day it is. So they generate quite a bit of calls. And then if you look at September as all by itself, 377 phone calls in the month of September. That's an average of 12.6 calls per day. My high, not quite my record high, but my high for this year was 37 calls per day in one day in September. In October, I had 2 days. One was 28 and one was 30. And the thing you have to remember is, these phone calls aren't just, hey, how's it going? Well, you've got a bear problem. Click. These are 15 or 20 minute drawn out conversations trying to find out why the bear's there, what's it doing, and how do we resolve the problem. Is it simply something, secure the garbage or the bird feeders or the pet food, something, information, educational, really simple, really fast. It still takes 15 to 20 minutes per call. Then, on top of that, I have bears in traps that I have to go get. I have to drug and process all of those bears. Then I have bears from yesterday's processing that I have to release. And then once those traps are empty, I have to take those traps and set them someplace wherever I need to be. So I get pretty full days at times. And the whole goal here is to try to just disseminate a little bit of information, kind of cut down on my work. I'm generally kind of lazy, so I don't mind cutting back on a little bit. So, when we talk about bear conflicts, where do we have bear conflicts? Well, not terribly surprising. It's really where we have the bulk of the people who live in the Flathead Valley. You know, we've got these tentacles that come down the Swan, you know, Condon, etc. We got conflicts down there, a lot of people. You go out the middle fork along the bottom part of Glacier National Park, you know, S6 Pinnacle, a lot of people up there. And then, you know, you go up the North Fork, you go up Highway 93 towards Olney, and, you know, the core valley itself, Big Fork, all the way up Columbia Falls, Whitefish. There's 1,874 dots on that map. Doesn't really look like that many dots, but if my printer were like a 3D printer and it actually made the bump of the ink higher, some of these would project way out into the room because these dots are stacked so intensely on top of one another. But then you look, you know, even where we're sitting right now, you know, you come down both sides of Flathead Lake, over Lakeside and Summers, lots of activity. Big Fork and South, lots of activity. So, lots of bears. In this area, we have about 1.2 black bears per square mile. Okay, that's off the chart density. I mean, crazy dense in terms of our black bear population. As you start to move north a little bit, it drops off, but we still retain about 1 bear per square mile. And when you think about a bear per square mile, I'm not talking about habitat of bear habitat. You know, I mean, you think of downtown Kalispell, downtown Big Fork is not really optimum bear habitat, therefore we shouldn't count it. I'm still counting it. We still have over a bear per square mile, even when you talk about that really marginal habitat. So very high density. So, Zorak, you idiot. You know, you put incompatible species in the Earth terrarium. What do you think? You agree? Don't agree? We've been around for a while. Bears have been around for a while. If we were really that incompatible, we'd probably have a lot higher incident rate than we really do. I don't believe that this is completely true. I think it's certainly true in a lot of those instances. You know, those 377 instances in September, for instance. But overall, I really don't think that it's that bad. So, and I'll be honest right now, some of these are poached, but most of these and all of the video that you'll see have been generated kind of right here. And so, you know, bears are like everybody else. They like their recreational and entertainment equipment. They roll into the backyard. They feel pretty comfortable. They all like a good sit down meal. But when we're talking about bears and conflicts, this is kind of the general edge of things. This is where it starts to begin. You've got a family group. You've got a female with 3 cubs a year. They're very comfortable. This is the manicured backyard. But what's in the background? Oh, come on. Yell at me. Really good bear habitat. So you've got this encroachment of people pushing further and further out into prime bear habitat. And we can't really be surprised when we wind up with this sort of thing happening in the backyard. So how do we mitigate against these sorts of things happening? I'm just going to kind of skip along here. The big thing is we can't really attract bears up onto the porch. We can't allow bears to kind of really get that comfortable in the backyard because that's when the problems really begin. And if you think about it, it's a generational learning problem. You've got a female with 3 cubs who's taught her kids to roll into the backyard, whether she gets food or not. It's still a comfort level. It's that habituation level. And the more habituated they become through time, the more comfortable they are. They don't care. They don't, you know, the lights come on or the dog barks and they run away. Well, that habituation eats away at that. And now they don't run away anymore. You know, they sit there and they lay it down and they watch and they don't much care. That's when things really start to go south. That's when we start having bears walking up on porches, you know, checking out glass windows, looking for things. And then, of course, bears are very persistent. They have a phenomenal sense of smell. About 100,000 times better than you and I can smell. People can stink, but we cannot smell. So ultimately what happens? He finds it. He gets that food reward. And now we've entered another kind of bear. We have the habituated bear who's really comfortable around people. They don't mind, they don't care. Then we start having a food conditioned bear. very different beast. He's now learned that people activity centers, whether it's a house or garage or the backyard, that's where I go to find food. And then, of course, the habituated food condition bear, that's the absolute worst category, because he doesn't care if you're there, he'll just walk in and take your food from you. And so then we've got huge problems. And again, the whole idea is not to encourage that sort of behavior. This is certainly encouraging the behavior. I don't know what you guys think. I see this all the time. You know, let's stockpile our garbage, and you know, I don't want to run to the dump every day, or I mean, these people must generate a phenomenal amount of garbage if they have to run this to the dump every day. It's not that hard, you know. You get one garbage bag maybe every couple days, and you're driving into town or you buy the green box site or whatever it is. It's not that hard. I see pickup truck, you know, the old pickup truck bed that's been converted into the trailer, and it's just mounded over the top. And that's when they decide it's ready to go to the dump. And we wonder why we have problems. So, everybody remember the old green box sites, how they used to look? Okay, well, I'll just run through a series of slides, kind of show you what happens, what the old green box sites did for us. We had lots of bears learn that the green box sites were the place to go for two reasons. One, you go, you find this great big green box, and it's full of stuff. And then the other beauty of the green box was there were lots of them. So it wasn't like I just had to go from one spot and then walk miles and miles to the next green box site. I just had to walk, you know, 8, 10, 12 feet. And there was a whole other big green box full of stuff. And then, of course, this is what happens. We start seeing garbage dribbling out through the woods, out of the backyard, across the yard, through the neighborhood, up and down the street, all sorts of things. And we can't really be surprised. And then you also have to kind of start thinking now, start asking the questions, who's kind of to blame for this? Yes, the bears dribbled the garbage all over the neighborhood, but you know, who left it out? So we start getting these food condition habituated bears. We get these guys who are no longer scared. You can see it's broad daylight, and now we're not. At least we're knocking on the door. Okay? So they're still at least somewhat courteous about things. But then the courtesy begins to fall away. You know, they get a little bit more aggressive. And all of this is because they have learned the lesson that we were teaching them, that this is where you go to find that free and easy food. Maybe take a little effort, you know, punch in the lid on the garage door. Well, if you're a great big bear, actually doing this doesn't take a lot of effort. And if that doesn't work, you start peeling apart the barn. Okay? And if you don't like barns, you start peeling apart the house. So, and these are all real photos, and they're all right here. So you can see, what do you see in this picture? Don't be shy. What's this yellow stuff dribbling out in there? Corn? Yeah, it's corn. Gotta love corn. These people were feeding deer and turkeys, and they'd go out with just a little pan every day, and they'd dribble it out in the yard. And they had like they'd buy hundreds of pounds at a time, and they put it in a garbage bag or a garbage can, and they had that just inside the garage. And then again, they're surprised when the bear decides that little pan of corn just wasn't quite enough. So who taught who something here? You guys may have seen this. This is my screensaver. This is just up on a whitefish, a real photo. And the beauty of it is there was a bowl of cat food just inside the door. And, you know, and ultimately, to be totally honest, candid with you, ultimately, it wasn't because he got his head stuck in the door, but the bear pulled the door off the hinges and ate the cat food. So, this is what happens when they take the door off the hinges. I deal with this probably twice a year, where bears actively get into a house by hook or crook. They get into the house. Sometimes they spend a little bit of time, sometimes they spend a lot of bit of time. And some of the damage that I've seen in houses is just astounding. I mean, thousands of dollars worth of damage to furniture, to furnishings, and then of course you've got a mess. And when bears get into the house, they're not dainty or delicate. When they want to open the refrigerator, rather than pulling the handle, they just go ahead and pull the door off the refrigerator. And in most cases, they actually knock the refrigerator over. And then the same with the cabinets, they pull all the doors off the cabinets. And they search sort of haphazardly, rather than feeling to see if there's anything up there to eat, they just hook whatever's on the shelf and pull it out and throw it across the room, and then if it's something good, then they eat it. So they generate quite the mess, and it can also generate a lot of excitement. I've had people trapped in their own bathrooms for a couple of hours. I had a husband and wife in Whitefish. She was trapped in the bedroom, he was trapped in the bathroom. They don't have a landline anymore. Anymore everybody got rid of their phone, other than their cell phone. And of course, neither of their phones were in the kitchen where the bear was. So they're yelling through the doorways to each other across the hall for about 2.5 hours before one of them decided they hadn't heard anything for a while. They ran down to the kitchen, grabbed the phone, ran back to the bathroom, and called 911. So, this happens fairly regularly. But why does it happen? How does it start? It kind of starts right here. We got a bowl of cat food outside. How many of you have pets? How many of you feed pets outside? How many of you are being honest about that? So, how many of you, now, I'll just continue along that theme kind of. How many of you have fruit trees? Yeah, a lot of fruit trees. How many of you pick your fruit? Religiously, I hope. Now, how many of you have pets, or we do pets already? What else? Livestock feed, chickens, those sorts of things? Okay, not very many. Yeah, a couple bad people over here. So, how about trash? How many of you have trash? No, yes. You're the one person I've ever met that does not generate trash. Congratulations. Yeah. So, that's the biggest thing. It starts kind of with pet food outside. It's kind of innocuous. People don't think about it. It's a small little bowl of kibble or whatever it may be. But they don't think about the bigger picture. So, let's kind of run through the bigger picture. I guess I don't need to say anything here. And if you've got one, well, you probably have 5. My record is 62 bird feeders in 1 yard. Yeah. It's crazy. So, this is how it really starts. Again, you've got prime bear habitat. I cropped this picture and I wish I hadn't. Prime bear habitat abutting up into a backyard. You got a bird feeder with a big sewer block hanging right there, just begging for somebody to eat. And the other thing is, once bears figure out where they can find food, they're more than happy to bring their friends or their kids. And so again, we now kind of circling right back where we started with that generational learning problem. This is actually a female, and what's sad in this picture is it's a female with 3 cubs in a year. They're all sort of portly for cubs in the year. But what's sad in this picture is there's only 3 bolts. So, they like feeding the babies. They think that's great and cute. But mom's the dominant bear. She's the one who's going to get the bulk of the food. That's just how the world works. And so you wind up creating this generational problem. You've got a female with cubs who says, hey, houses are great. Look, you guys get food, you get fat. Next year I'm kicking you off on your own. It's a big scary world out there. Where do they remember to go because they got food and they got fat? They're going to go to a house. So that's intentional feeding. This is very intentional feeding. This was a guy up on Foothills Road outside of Kalispell. He thought he had this great idea. He was going to generate really good pictures of bears, doing bear stuff. And he got the blocks on the bottom of that wood box are, railroad ties, creosote treated railroad ties. The whole contraption they built probably weighed about 300 pounds. And he thought, well, bears wouldn't do anything to that. You would go to Costco and get the big Kirkland brand dog biscuits, dump a box in there, and you had a little slot that the bears would sort of, their fingers are very dexterous, and they hook, they use their claws and they hook a biscuit out and they'd sit there and eat it, and it was all great. And you can see the one's got a biscuit in his mouth now. And ultimately what happened at 300 pounds, not including the weight of the box of Kirkland brand dog food biscuits, one morning it was just gone. And he called, and I couldn't decide if he was complaining that the bears had stolen his biscuit feeder, or I don't know where he was really going, but I admit I was sort of stupefied because, well, I'm sorry? Not surprised? So, again, we teach them these sorts of bad habits. You can guess what this is, and you can guess what that is. Yeah, bears really like cars. They really like motorcycle seats, ATV seats, hot tub covers, those sorts of things. The interior vinyl. You know that new car smell that everybody, it's raves for the new car smell. You know what that is? It's formaldehyde. It's formaldehyde. That's the new car smell. Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the biggest chemicals in the creation and treatment of vinyl is formaldehyde and a whole variety of other caustic chemicals. But that's what the new car smell is. So don't need to really enjoy that too much. But to bears, it's really attractive. I mean, for whatever reason, it's not got any food value, of course. But any vinyl-made products that sit in the sun and get warm, even several-year-old cars on a hot, closed up, the windows are closed, the doors are closed. You open the door and you just get a really brief new car smell. It's still formaldehyde leaching out of primarily the dashboard. But bears really like it. So they go to great lengths to get it. And they'll eat the foam of the seat. They just shred everything. And they're really good. Again, lots of dexterity in their claws. They're great at pulling door jambs down. They're great at popping windows. I've actually seen where bears have taken the door window and it's intact, laying on the ground. They don't even break them. They just pop it out. I deal with this also kind of 2 or 3 times a year. Any guesses what this might be? Sorry, one more time? A crawl space, yeah, it's very good. All right, hang on a minute. I'm doing my part. Yeah, this is a crawl space. This is up in Whitefish. This is just, you can see it's just this last spring, March 20th of 2015. It's a season. The reason I asked about seasonality of homeowners is because of this series of slides. I don't want to pick on anybody, but what happened was, they were snowbirds. They had left, and spring was beginning to roll around. They thought they'd come back home. And when he was home, he's in the living room, a room like this, and he was sitting in the couch kind of over along this wall, and then he hears, can't really figure out what that is. So he starts walking around the living room, trying to trace this sound. And then he realizes it's coming from under the floor. So he's walking around listening to the floor, trying to figure out where the noise was really coming from. And then he was like, oh, I've been gone all winter, I've got packages. So he runs down to Sliders Ace Hardware there in Whitefish, grabs a couple of rat traps. He's geared up, he's ready to go. He gets his flashlight that of course he's going to carry in his mouth, so he'll keep his hands free for his rat traps. And he goes down into the crawl space, and he finds the white drain is actually, yes, you guessed it, that is his toilet drain. Fortunately, he's only been home for a couple of days. But the water flowed really freely. There was never any problem with that. So, there wasn't a lot of damage there. A little. But what he noticed when he got underneath there, what do you guys notice?
Sheetrock.
Sheetrock, all right, insulation. Somebody's saying insulation. What do you see? Well, yeah, you don't see a lot of it. You kind of see some remnants of some insulation there. Maybe it was supposed to be there. If you look up in the top, right above the elbow of the draining pipe, you see the paper backing of insulation, like it's been stapled under the floor joist, like it probably should be. Yet, if you look under all the floor joists, you don't really see any there. So he thought that was sort of curious. I don't blame him. So he comes revealing around another corner. Well, he found all his insulation. And I wished I was able to get a picture of it, but I'm under there now too with a flashlight in my mouth fumbling around. But there is actually a bear just on the other side of the insulation. So, it had been in there, I assume it had been there all winter. It pulled all the insulation down because, hey, why not? It's insulation. I mean, you can't blame him for that, right? And, it might be itchy, but boy, it's going to keep you nice and warm. And so he had done what bears will do. And again, I see this kind of twice a year is kind of my long-term average. And so, you know, it just begs the question, when you leave on a seasonal house, maybe we should board things up a little better. Just a suggestion. So, when we talk about, I like to pick on whitefish. I don't know why, because whitefish generates a lot of calls for me, so I have this thing about whitefish. But let's just take a look. You know, here's a den site. This is not actually the den that you just saw. This is actually a real den that is sort of excavated and everything. But you look at where we are. You guys recognize whitefish at all? Do you know where you are on Whitefish Lake? I can't really show it, but that right there, that's Whitefish City Beach. And so we've got a bear, you know, that's actually the Bay Point condominium area. And if we dial down on that a little bit, we see we've got a bear den right next to the houses, right next to condos. Again, bears are what we call plastic. They're a very malleable species. White-tailed deer are the same way. They have a high tolerance for people. If they can figure out how to live amongst people, they'll do it. They're very happy to do it. Black bears in particular, very plastic. They can live in some of these places where we think that it's not great bear habitat. Well, the bears are certainly indicating that it's maybe better than we think, and I think bears know they're able to gauge habitat better than we can. So they can do these things. The question is, can they do it correctly, or do they just constantly get into management issues when they're doing this? The beauty of it is in whitefish, at any one time between that May and November window, I loosely guess I have 8 to 10 bears within the city limits of whitefish at any one time. So any 24-hour period, there's up to 10 and maybe even more bears in whitefish. And yet I'll only get a phone call about 1 or 2 particular bears, somebody walking up and down Dakota Avenue or Wisconsin Avenue or somewhere. Go ahead.
Well, I was just telling her that in Kalispell, I live downtown Kalispell, and they go through the alleys to little dumpsters. How many do you think are in Kalispell?
I think Kalispell's less, based on how many bears they chase around in Kalispell. They come in Ashley Creek and they come in the rivers. And they're using the Stillwater and the Whitefish River, not so much the Flathead because it's a little bit further uptown. The Whitefish and the Stillwater come right into town. Lots of bears in Lawrence Park, for instance, simply because, we're in Lawrence Park, Woodland Park. Same with lions. We have a lot of lions in Kalispell as well. And they're using those river corridors. They travel down in, through that really lush riparian zone. And then they pop up and they realize, oh my God, I'm in town. They panic and they run around town for a while. The police are chasing them everywhere. And ultimately they go up a tree and the police call me and I come and I'm like, yep, it's a bear up a tree. And, he's a couple hundred feet up some of these trees and there's really nothing I can do about that. Bears do not bounce as well as you would hope. When you dart them, they just come out of a tree like a bag of wet cement. So, that's not really my goal. So a lot of times I just get back in my truck and I say, well, leave it alone, it'll come down, it'll figure out how to get out of town, just leave it alone. It's only 2 o'clock in the morning. It has 4 or 5 hours before there's a lot of people on the street. Let's see if he can figure out how to do it on his own and get out. And in 90% of the cases, they really do know how to, they figure out how to get out of town. So, this does happen. This happens in Kalispell. Columbia Falls, it happens quite a bit, but Columbia Falls is a little different because it's smaller. It has a lot more escape routes. Whitefish, because of where it's situated, winds up with lots of problems, and it's harder to get out of, partly because a lot of people get more excited there. I have a theory I want to share, but they just get a little bit more excited. Big Fork has bears in town as well. Sliders Park, down by the old electric plant. Lots of bears roll through there. Nobody really knows about it. They walk up and down Electric Avenue. In the middle of the night, people don't know that. Who remembers the Dairy Queen bear? Oh, yeah. The Dairy Queen bear, Digger, he was one of my study bears when I was doing my master's, way forever ago. And he spent a lot of time, as you know, a lot of time in Big Fork. And he was, when I caught him one time, he was 860 pounds. And, that's a very ominous shadow walking down Electric Avenue. So, just another quick little video. kind of the standard thing that I see you deal with. You know, I got bears up on, a couple of bears anyway, up on porches. People are very excited. He's actually surprisingly calm in the video, but I got the volume down. But then, you know, now we wind up, okay, it's not just a couple of bears, it's a family group of bears. We got 4 again. And, you know, mom just teaches her kids, hey, let's walk up on decks. It's not a big deal. We usually get food there. Again, we're right back to that generational problem. What do you think is going to happen to those cubs next year when she kicks them off as yearlings? They're on their own, big scary world. They're going to roll up to the first house they find and do what they've been taught. And worse, do what we've taught them to do. So let's see.
Have they all got ear tags?
Those did. Yeah, I dealt with that family group once before, and that's not a great sign. You know, and I'm just going to let this one play for a couple minutes, and you guys can just kind of be entertained for a minute. But yeah, you know, it's not a 3 strikes and you're out world. It kind of depends on how egregious your first strike is. It can be a 1 strike and you're done. Or if you have never really done anything terrible bad, you still run away when somebody yells at you. You're only getting a bird feeder here or there. But I let them have lots of strikes when it's something like that, especially if I feel that it's something that through some aversive conditioning, you know, releasing beanbag rounds, rubber bullets. The whole idea behind that program is to basically force bears into a cost-benefit analysis. Bears are really smart. They're what's called a single response learner. They figure it out on their very first time. If it works for them, they'll do it the same way every time. If it doesn't work for them, they'll try a different avenue or try a different method. But if it costs them too much, they give up really fast. People, so we all recognize the fact we are not a single response learner. We have to touch the hot stove repeatedly before we realize we shouldn't do it. And what's sad is we're still likely to go ahead and do it again. So we're not a single response learner. But you know, the aversive conditioning program is to exact a higher cost than the value of the food that they got. If I can do that by catching them, drugging them, holding them, and then releasing them with beanbags, rubber bullets, those sorts of things, that's a pretty high cost if all you got was a cup of dog food. You know, it's not worth that anymore. So ideally they figure it out because they're smarter than we are. But that's not a behavior that they should continue because it just costs them too much. What I liked about that is the synchronicity of when they stand up. I can't script these things. So, we'll get to the quiz part now. I just want you guys to call in. The reason I'm skipping through, I'll skip through these pretty quick because there's one video that I'm hoping that we can get the volume cranked up. I want you to listen to the video and I'll explain it in just a minute. But just call out. Don't be shy. I mean, now is not the time to be shy. Black bear, grizzly bear. This is your test. This is where I live here. Okay. Okay, you guys were doing really good, pretty strong, and then it's not like, whoa. All right, good job. Well, there goes one beer for me. Thanks a lot. All right. Ooh. What's throwing everybody on this one? A radio collar, yeah. Everybody thinks the only thing we collar are grizzly bears. I actually have a lot more black bear radio collar than I do grizzly bears. So I always throw this one in because everybody said, "What? It's got to be a grizzly bear because I'm wearing a radio collar." This is how most people really see bears, truth be told. It just starts to get a little harder as you look at these. This is actually grizzly bears, as we said it. Real rounded ears. It's hard. The profile is terrible, but a shorter, blunter nose. But definitely the big rounded ears over the top of the head. Okay. Now we're starting to trick you up a little bit. This is actually a black bear, but posture is huge when you're looking at a bear. What you're seeing here is everybody says, well, yeah, he's got a huge hump. Well, in fact, it's actually just his cervical vertebrae, and when he bends his head, they elevate a little bit. And so it's very deceiving.
Baby grizzly.
Oh, there you go, we have a winner. Yeah, this is a juvenile grizzly bear. That's a black bear. That's a black bear. Oh, come on, this one's a gimme, people. Come on. That was a grizzly bear. How about this one? Yeah, I actually get that a lot. I don't even see a bear. And then the other thing that throws people is that it's tri-colored. Well, it's not really tri-colored. It's a question of shade, direct sunlight, those sorts of things. This is a black bear who's being bleached out by direct sun on its back, so it looks like it's a silver tip or a lighter color. And then you've got that dark Sally, and then you've got that dark, really dark underbelly. In fact, this bear is all the same color. It's just a question of shadow and light. Yeah, this is a black bear. It's a great big stout guy. This is on the Camas Road inside Glacier Park. Oh, there we go. I was feeling bad. I had to give you something. Grizzly bear. Another gimme. Okay, this is a grizzly bear. Now for the big one. How do you tell feet? Anybody know? How do you tell feet? Okay, there is a clue in there already. There's a straight line across the mat for you. Okay, take a guess. You can only be wrong 50% of the time. Black bear, grizzly bear. This is a black bear. Now, bonus points. Front foot, hind foot. More bonus points. Left front, right front.
Right.
Okay. Hold your hand up. Hold your right hand up. Turn it around, look at it. Okay.
Right.
All right. Bears are footed or their toes are arranged just like our hand is. So basically, if you have a track, and it doesn't have to be a foot, it can just be a track, then you lay down a straight edge, all 5 toes on a grizzly bear are going to be above that line. So, like that one. All 5 toes will be above that flat line between the toes and the pad. On a black bear, there will always be one toe below the flat line. You'll either bisect it, cut that toe in half, or it'll be completely below the line. And the toe that's down is its thumb. So you can measure friends, win lots of money by astounding them with your science knowledge. So, before I skip, this was kind of my cue picture. Anybody got any questions? Then I'm going to go ahead and roll the video and try to figure out how to turn the volume off. All right, we'll do that.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why do I need to recognize which is which? Don't I just run away with either one?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Why do I need to recognize which is which? Don't I just run away with either one?
Well, you have to decide if you should run fast or kind of medium speed. No, it's just, you can win money and amaze your friends with your knowledge. And so, it's some of these little clues that people like to know. I ask it all the time over the phone, what are their tracks? Well, yeah. Well, how many toes? 5. What do the toes look like? Well, there's one that's below. It's just information, education kind of stuff. Anything that we can do, the more I look at it, I'll go down my rabbit hole of Little Red Riding Hood. It's starting me down. The reason that we're afraid of bears, the reason we're afraid of lions, and the reason that we're afraid of wolves is because we have this really innate ability to vilify them. If we can vilify them, if we can justify sort of this irrational fear that we have, they're easier to hate. If they're easier to hate or be afraid of, they're easier to have extirpation programs. I think back in the day, in the 30s and 40s, when we did have extirpation programs, it was all because of that Little Red Riding Hood syndrome. The big bad wolf was there just to kill grandma or eat the 3 little pigs. Bears are nothing but marauding machines of mayhem that do nothing but break into houses and rape and pillage. And really, bears want less trouble with people than we want with them. And so, the more that we can, the more information that we can get out there and try to de-vilify this mythical beast, the better off I think we are, I am, from a management side.
So, sir,
Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, just going off that, maybe in the black, are there more black bears?
There are.
Because I've always grown up with friends chasing a lot of black bears away, which makes me think that black bears are more skittish than grizzlies. But when I lived in Alaska, you could chase the grizzlies away.
Right.
So they're both fairly skittish, right?
Well, yeah, again, they really don't want trouble with people. They
So I
just,
guess my question is it one more aggressive than the other, or are they both similar?
okay. It's a really fair question, and I'll tell you that there is not a good answer. Black bears actually, unfortunately I deal with bear and lion and wolf attacks all the time. I go all over the country to do this, and black bears actually have a higher fatality rate per contact made than grizzlies do, by about 10-fold. And the reason for that is when a black bear attacks you, the probability that it's going to end very poorly for you is 10 times higher than it is for grizzly bears. Grizzly bears like to mouth you. When I say this, I don't mean it lightly. We just, kind of our terminology, they mouth you, they bite you. But what they're doing is they're really just sort of sizing you up. How much of a threat do you really represent? Should I be scared, or what should I do with you? Whereas black bears, they don't mouth you, they maul you. And they don't, black bears or grizzly bears will knock you down, and that's why we say play dead. If contact is made, only if contact is made, play dead. Because what they're going to do, they're going to bat you around a little bit, they're going to mouth you, they're going to bite you, they're going to scratch you, but they're really not trying to outright kill you at that first initial contact. Then they step away and they watch you for a little bit. Did I do an adequate job to alleviate the threat? And if they feel that they did, they leave. Black bears don't do that. They almost never break that initial contact. So when they start to chew on you, our recommendation is fight back, because the probability of fighting back and breaking the encounter off is much higher than the probability of you surviving the initial contact if you don't. If it's a black bear. So it's kind of a weird, it's a tricky question. It is. But see, the problem with those sorts of things is it happens so fast that, it's just a big hairy blob coming out of the woods and jumping on you. And that's one of the problems that we face all the time. When you make these recommendations, it's great, only if you know what it is. If you don't know what it is, our recommendation is to play dead until it hits critical mass, and then you gotta fight back. I can't tell you when that is. So it's one of those great unknowns. Yes?
What determines which bears you tag?
What's that?
How do you,
Oh,
what
who do I
determines
tag?
which ones you tag?
Any bear that I catch in a management situation, I tag, automatically gets a tag, so that I have it, they're all uniquely numbered, so that I can monitor them through time to see what sort of conflicts they have. That's, the strike system. I caught this bear how many times in the past and what has it been doing. If its crime has slowly been escalating up, how many resources does it, how much effort and resources do I put into a bear that's getting worse? And versus when do I remove that bear? But at the same time, if it's just doing the same crime over and over because it's easy and allowed to do that, I give it a pass up until some critical point.
Well, there's tagging, and is that different than the tracer that you put on, or is that the same?
No, it is. I mean, there's differences. It's just a different level of monitoring. I put radio collars on a lot of grizzly bears. We put radio collars on a lot of black bears. Kind of depends on who they are and where they are, relative to the probability of repeat problems. And then all the research bears that I catch, of course, we put radio collars. Yes?
So how often do you type a stupid human to leave the bird feed out?
Well, there's been lots of talk. I carry a lot of beanbag around and a lot of rubber bullets. And, it's like, why don't you just sort of accidentally shoot somebody in the rump once in a while?
Do they learn? I mean, do these humans learn? I'm sorry.
Well, I was telling, I forget the public owners, people have said that I must have really good insight into understanding people. And I'll be honest with you, when I start to understand people, I've been dealing with bears for 26 years for fishing game. And when I start to understand people, I will absolutely be time to retire. Because that'll screw that far. I do not want to understand people. And so, do we learn? We do through time, but what really gets people is our pocketbook. I talk about a cost-benefit analysis, so it's easy to do with bears. If I can do the exact with people, I'm a biologist, I have no enforcement authority, but I call my local game warden and I say, hey, I want this guy to write a ticket because he's constantly got stuff out, probably on purpose. You know, it's $150 and then $500 and then the judge decides how much it's going to be on the third. People, it gets a little attention, but it's a process. So we do not learn out of that. Yes?
Bear spray or 44 Magnum?
Bear spray every time. Yeah, that's been a controversy that's been around for a long time. You know, the beauty of bear spray, one is it's available to everybody. It's cheap, you know, $45 or $100 a can. It's safe for everybody. I mean, it's very unpleasant, but it's safe. I mean, if I've had it go off in the truck in my car, you know, I run with a dog quite a bit. He likes to sit in the front seat where, of course, I have my bear spray sitting underneath him. And, you know, driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour and the can goes off inside the car. Very unpleasant. But, you know, we do learn, I hope. But I had it happen twice, so apparently not. My bad. But, you know, it's just safe. I mean, it's very effective. I don't know if any of you have ever had the joy of having a little bit. The beauty of the way that the capsicum works, which is the chemical in the bear spray, it triggers a respiratory response. As soon as you even smell it a little bit, your natural response, your brain says, go. And all you've done is suck as much of it as you can, as deep into your lungs as you can. And it's brutal. So it works really well. It's very effective. It's very safe. It's cheap. And, you know, you don't have to worry about where that, you know, if you're banging away at a bear, you don't have to worry about where things are going. It's all right there. And the probability of the truth be told, I don't know if I should go this closer or farther. Okay. I thought maybe I was just dreaming. I'm going to electrocute myself here. The other beauty of it is that, you know, it comes out in a fog, so you don't actually have to hit the bear. You know, you just kind of got to get it out towards the bear. Whereas when you're shooting at the bear, you kind of got to hit it. I mean, that's the whole idea. And so, and I've been charged a lot because of what I do. And hitting a bear when it's coming in at 35 miles an hour at 15 feet, it's amazing how small a 1,000-pound bear is. They're very small when they're going that fast, that close. Yes?
Does interaction with humans influence the hibernation?
It doesn't seem to. I mean, we've talked about a lot of the, you know, the human type foods, whether that's a big thing. It definitely puts on different fat. Okay, when bears get into a lot of garbage, not so much the fruit and not so much the pet foods or the livestock feeds, because that's a different kind of fat. But when they get into garbage and those sorts of things, it puts on a really simple white fat. It's very high in water content. It's not very energetic in terms of once they start to dissolve and utilize that fat. And so bears, you know, we see lots of bears that are almost grotesquely obese on white fat. It's not that nice, dark, kind of what's called an adipose fat. It's a little different color. It's a little different chemical makeup. That's what bears get through the winter. And so we have seen bears with what seems like a lot of fat go into the den in the fall, but come out earlier in the spring because they burned up that fat. And it turns out that it was a white fat. So not so much in terms of when they go to den, but certainly when they come out, because they just run out of gas because they've had the wrong kind of fat because of the foods they've eaten. Yeah.
You haven't talked much about mountain lions. What kind of an issue do we have with them?
Oh, I do talk about lions. I deal with them quite a bit. And we have very high density lions here. Right now, because our whitetail numbers are back up, you know, you think back several years ago, our whitetail numbers were not very good. We had lots of lion problems. Those juveniles, that yearling class and even the 2-year-old class died out because they just couldn't make it. Our deer numbers were low. We didn't have much winter, so our deer were very healthy and, you know, they could get away. They had a lot of escapability. Our lion numbers kind of sank down as they do. That cyclical prey-based type stuff. Well, we're back in the deer business, and so we're back in the lion business. We have a lot of lions. My best estimate right now is a breedable female, which is 24 months of age or greater. We have one every 12 or so square miles. And then we have a male on top of that, and he'll have 100, depending on where he is, 100 to 150 square miles of habitat. So he'll have, 4 or 5, maybe 6 females underneath him. And then the biggest problem, as we talked about at dinner, with lions, cats in general, whether we're talking African lions or leopards or whomever we're talking about, are notorious for cannibalism and infanticide. They don't play and share well with others. They don't tolerate juveniles interloping into, this is my territory. They're highly territorial. Bears have home ranges. They don't fight over land. They might fight over an immediate resource, that huckleberry bush or that breedable female. But in terms of space, they don't. Lions fight over space because this is mine and I'm not going to share it. So they don't tolerate these juvenile lions in their turf. And so that forces the juvenile lions into that marginal habitat. Well, that's where you and I live. And so when we're starting to talk about those sorts of things, we're not talking a density of one lion per 10 or 12. We're now talking 2 or 3 juveniles, which are the worst case. Minimal hunting skills. They're not big enough or experienced enough to go out and take down an adult whitetail deer. So we're looking for smaller, easier prey items. And now, because of that infanticide cannibalism aspect, they're pushed into our backyards. Well, what's in our backyards? Cats, dogs, livestock, kids, those sorts of things. So yeah, it's a huge issue, especially as we continue as a species. The deer like, those open slopes, nice winter range, elk like it too, so do we. So we put our house right in the middle of it and we disrupt that natural migratory pattern that they may have in and out of the winter range because now it's developed, it's no longer suitable. And we built right in the middle of it. That forces them down, or they have to tolerate into the backyard. Lions follow their prey base, puts more lions into the backyard. Yeah. I'm sorry? When do lions mate? Lions are like any other cat. They can mate any time of the year. They have a 32-day estrus cycle, but the bulk of our lions breed twice a year, or they don't do it twice a year, but we have 2 windows, one in January and one in August. And that's also corresponds with when we see the pulse of reproduction hitting the ground. Females kick their kids off at about 18 months. So if you bred in August, you go the cycle, that January you're kicking your kids off and you're going to breed. And if you bred in January, you go that cycle a year and a half, you kick your kids off in August, that's when you're going to breed. So we have 2 pulses of when we have that reproductive effort hitting the ground. All those juveniles hit the ground about the same time. Yeah.
What about bears?
Okay, what about bears? When do bears breed? Bears breed in, primarily May and June. Yeah, it starts, the 10th or so of May, and it'll run. We've seen females in estrus out into the 4th of July, but that's really late. And that's a second cycle. They didn't take the first cycle. Now, when are bears officially pregnant? Well, this is a bonus question.
What are you talking about?
They have delayed implantation. What's another group of animals that have delayed implantation?
Kangaroos.
I don't know. Yes? Mustelids, the weasel family. They have delayed implantation too. And what that is, for bears, it's astounding. I could go on bears and bear physiology for because it's really cool stuff. But bears breed in May. Let's say, you know, boy and girl get together in May. Well, the egg is fertilized. Okay, she's released an egg. She's an estrus. An egg comes down the fallopian tube, and it's free floating around in the uterus. He gets together with her. Now there's a big sperm. They get together. We have a fertilized egg. Are we pregnant?
How long does it hang out?
No, we're not pregnant.
How long does it hang out?
It hangs out. It just floats around in there, kind of in nebula land, until about mid-November. It's divided several hundred times, so now it's this, multi-hundred cell, what's called a blastocyst. Okay, it's a microscopic bear, but we're not pregnant. And so the bear, kind of gets ready to go to den, photo period, shortening days, number of minutes of daylight in the day, food availability, weather, those sorts of things, trigger the bear hormonally to start thinking about, maybe I should go to bed. Energetically, it's cheaper to go to bed than it is to stay out. So they basically kind of pinch their stomachs and say, well, I'm feeling pretty fat. I think I could pull off kids because I have a lot of fat reserves. I'm going to go to bed. Their body says, yep, I agree. You're plenty fat. The body goes through the hormonal change. The uterine lining engulfs and gorges with blood. That blastocyst now implants, and now we're pregnant. We've been bred for 5 months, but we're not pregnant until now. And then 70 days later, very short gestation period, bears are born in the den, first week of January. They weigh about 12 ounces. The other interesting thing about bears is they can have what's called multiple paternage, and that's a beauty of bears. It's a genetic mechanism that they use that allows for really low numbers of animals without having that genetic inbreeding problem. So a female can have 3 cubs in a litter, and every one of them will have a different dad because of that delayed implantation. You've got all those little blastocysts floating around, and all the eggs floating around. You breed with multiple bears, but you're never pregnant. So what happens when we're pregnant is humans don't release another egg. So you stop being able to become pregnant because you already are. Bears aren't pregnant, so they keep dropping eggs, and they'll breed with multiple males through that month period. So as many eggs as they drop, and as many males as they hook up with, they could be pregnant that many times. Yes?
So earlier you were talking about the bear going into a breeding cycle into July, and you said that was unusual because it was the second heat, so to speak.
Right.
So does she have blastocysts floating around in there, or no?
She could. And see, that's the beauty of it. She just keeps dropping eggs until other mechanisms, we haven't figured out exactly what triggers them to stop.
Okay.
But it seems to be somewhere in that July window where they just stop dropping eggs. Males kind of lose interest, hard to imagine. But they're sort of done at that point. And then they go on, and that's when they start to put up in those fat reserves. But it's a great question. We have not figured that one completely out yet.
So technically, from what that says, it says to me that all bears should stay in estrus or go through an estrus cycle late.
Well, not late, but it's sort of one continuous window with sort of little interruptions. Because they do, they go through estrus and then it sloughs off again. And I think part of what we think is it's so that they attract other males. If you're in estrus all the time, only the local population of males are going to be interested in you. Because it's like, oh, okay, well, she's running around the corner, I'll go over there. Whereas if you cycle out of it, they lose interest and then they go away looking for other females. Then you kind of come back into estrus. That may pull somebody from someplace else, and that just helps with that genetic diversity. That's kind of one of the theories we're operating on. Yeah.
So how many do they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Well, I've dealt with a bear that had 6. Yeah. I mean, it's, that's unbelievable. The number is just astounding.
Did they all live?
They did. I've had one that did, she went to bed with all 6. And then I don't know what happened to her. But when they have that many, there's a lot of risk out there in the world. Male bears are more than happy to eat little bears. There's a lot of things that kill bears, cars, trains, you name it. other bears, people, lots of things. And so for a female to carry that many all the way through, and actually through the spring and then cut her loose, is hard to imagine that she could have done 6. But I've seen 6 on the ground, yeah.
So, after last summer, the heat and the very dry weather, how would you expect that to affect the reproduction?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of a mixed bag. We were talking a little bit earlier, the numbers reflect, the numbers at 1223, since it's really high. But if you went looking for huckleberries, you actually could find them. They were on the north slope, they were above 5,000 feet, they weren't very accessible, but they were there. Bears were finding. I was dealing with lots of fat bears, both management and research bears. And research bears, I was traveling a lot this fall in Glacier Park, where they don't get foods. It's very regimented in terms of their food storage. There's no trash, there's no breakage. And so, but they were really fat. They were finding ample foods. And then, lots of management bears, of course, they were all fat. And I wished I'd been able to research trap more outside the park, but it's just the way that it worked, to see how fat some of those bears were that were non-management outside of the park. Were they finding ample foods? Because really, ecosystem-wide, it was kind of patchy. There were places where it was really good, and there were places where there was just nothing. So I think that this year is going to be about the norm. Last year, everybody was having cubs. Last year, and that's the other thing, is you can't compare this year against last year. Last year, the alder bush was having huckleberries. It was so good. Everything had huckleberries hanging on. And this year, it's just kind of the norm. It was, not a bumper crowd, but it wasn't this dire thing that you read in the newspaper. I think it'll be about normal production. I think 1998, we had an absolute bust. We had no bucks, we had no service bear, we had no anything. And we had no cubs on the ground that spring. So it's very impactful. Yes, somebody had a question right here. No? Okay. Any other? Yeah.
Are they going to come out earlier?
I don't know. I don't think they'll come out earlier because of lack of food. I think they all went in really well. But depending on what kind of winter we have from here on is going to dictate when they start to come out. You think about last year, at this time, January 4th was the last measurable snow that we had last year. And here we are, we're almost February 4th, so we're a full month. We're getting some snow. I'm very encouraged. You look at the snowtail sites like Noisy Basin, Crouse Creek right out the window up here, Storm Kings, Stony, they're all about 89% of the normal pack. So we're not, we're a little short, but we're not that bad. And what it'll depend on is how it comes off. If we get really warm and it all comes off early, bears are going to come out early. Or if we get a big rain event and the water can't percolate into the soil because it's still cold and frozen, what happens is the dens flood, bears come out then too. So it kind of depends on the weather. But not so much food right now. I think we're good on food. Yep.
So if there's not as much of a difference between like a black bear and a grizzly bear's aggressiveness, what do you think about park bears and like the rest of them? Because I'm scared of park bears.
Well, it's interesting. We talk about this a lot. We always say, and you'll always read, and in certain audiences, I'll agree that any level of habituation is a bad thing.
They don't get hunted.
Well, they don't get hunted, but some habituation in the park, and it happens in Glacier, and it happens in Yellowstone, and it happens in a lot of these other big parks. A little bit, the right level, what that is, I can't tell you, but the right level of habituation may not be a bad thing in those sorts of settings. Because bears get so accustomed to somebody, there's always somebody on the trail, so they're less surprised when somebody comes around that blind corner. It's a less aggressive response because they're habituated to seeing people coming around that blind corner. It's like, whoa, they're still startled, but it's not as big a startle because they're habituated to that. A friend of mine, a long time ago in Yellowstone, did a study in Pelican Basin looking at exactly that, looking at the response rate and unpredictability of people on some of those trails. And he's got great video footage of people walking down the trail, totally oblivious to everything. A radio collared bear that he happened to be following at that particular time, walking down the trail towards the people, stops, gets up, walks up the hill, and is looking down on the people as they walk right past him. He knew they were coming because he had some level of habituation. I always encounter people here. I'm not going to be very surprised by it. Anything else? With that, I'll start the thingy if I can find the TV control. So as this goes, I'm not going to. You guys can just watch it. Hopefully the sound comes through okay. But I want you to just listen to the stages. It is kind of comical. It's one of my favorites. This was up by Lake Fife, and it's several years ago now. But just listen to the conversation that they have as this incident kind of scrolls on. It's about 4 minutes long. I know it's kind of long, but you see the whole rainbow of emotions and responses to what's happening.
Yeah, he's ornerier than heck. He just snarled when we rang the bell. And I closed all the windows because I think it was the bacon and the beans, see, that he smelled. Okay. I sure appreciate it. We've got another gal down on the water who can't get up here, and I'm keeping her down there. Thank you. Bye. Where do you turn it off? Just flip it. Okay. He's ripping off all of my... Oh, we got 911 on my cell phone. We got 911. I said he's allowed his term. He's going to get I mean, he won't go down to the... Here. He wants in here for the smell, though. He's not going to go up to Diane because she doesn't smell good. All right. Well, what happened if he did break? We just go lock ourselves in the bathroom? Or run like hell and get in the car? He said, call me if things get worse. I said, he's just ripping up all. Don't never mind calling if things get worse. Oh, he is. He's on his way. He knows where Jerry lives. I actually feel... And tell them to stay in. Who's at home? Ned and Ted. Who's Ned and Ted? Dan's sister-in-law and... Boy, those are some killer beans. Oh my God, I'm so glad that you are? Well, then stay there. Close the door and don't come out. So when I'll be able to do food down. Fish and game are coming. Something beans. He really won't come downstairs. Oh, he likes the sugar on there. I'm hoping he doesn't break the window with that. Exactly. Oh, he's pulling it down to his level. Oh, he's licking the hummingbird feeder. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, he's pulling it down to his level. Oh, he's licking the hummingbird feeder. Yeah. Betty, you might get a cell phone, because if you can't get 911 on that phone, there's not going to be use having it. I think that was just your table. Diane's just watching. Yeah, he likes that. But maybe we should call this bear feeders and not hummingbird feeders. Right now.
I'll just go ahead and stop it there, but you can kind of. But you can kind of see the whole spectrum there. You know, first they started off really scared. What's our plan? We got to get 911. Well, if it breaks in, let's we're going to go to the car. Then they're worried about Diane. Well, Diane's all right because she doesn't smell good. Feel bad for Diane, but and then you know, then we're just sort of intrigued by the behavior. Oh, look, he's wrecking all our screens. Oh well, and then we jump to a phone. We're now having a really casual conversation about whether a phone works or not. And then the bear knocks over a table and they run over to see if he's okay. I mean, you're seeing the whole range of what happens. And it makes me chuckle every time I see it. Simply because it starts off as this really terrifying incident. And then, maybe it's not so bad. But it's one of those things we still just don't really want to encourage. And with that, I wish you guys all a good night.
I'd like to just thank Erik Wenum again for a great presentation tonight. He's agreed to hang around and answer any more questions. I know there's probably lots more. I'd like to hear more about mountain lions personally, but I think that I'd just like to thank you all for coming again, and if you want to hang out and ask more questions, we'll kind of transition to more of a Q&A at this point, and thank you very much.